How you doing? All right, How To Heaven viewers. Today what we're going to be working on is sun visors for this 2001 Ford Ranger. So I'm going to tear the old sun visors apart, and then I'm going to make some patterns, cut some materials, sew it up, and show you how it's done. Stay tuned. So what we've got here is, this is the driver's side sun visor, and if you're in the driver's seat, this is what you're going to see right there. That's underneath it, that's the warning, and this is like a piece of material to slip, I don't know what, some registration paperwork, who knows. The silly thing is they didn't put a second one over here, so this, whatever you put in there, barely even stays in. But Ford did it, and they did it on both sides. So the way that this is constructed is, there's a rod that goes through, and I'm going to show you where it goes through. And what you do first is you're going to cut the stitching right here, all the way around. You cut the stitching, and you're going to separate this, and this is what you're going to find. So inside the visor, you'll have this hard piece of masonite. And you can see that they bonded it with rivets, and then they use staples to go right through this metal. Factory's got some really cool tools. And on this side, you've got a plastic piece with a rod that goes inside of this. This is the hinge, and this snaps onto your visor clip through this hole right here, like that. Over here in my hand is the actual pivot pin. This gets screwed into the headliner with 3 screws, and it simply slips into here. Now there's a friction, what do you call that? A friction connection? Well, actually this goes all the way through there, and it's friction that holds this in place. And you can see there's a flat spot here and a flat spot there, and that's just when you're putting the visor down. You might notice on some vehicles it kind of clicks into an indentation. That's what that little flat spot is for. Now, there's a driver and a passenger, and you don't want to get the two mixed up. If you do, there's one thing you can do, is you can read your materials, and by that what I mean is you're going to look for witness marks or things like that. Here you can see that Ford put a piece of glue right there, and in this location it kind of pulled the masonite off. And if you look very carefully at the board, you're going to see that there's a light line right there where the glue was, and it's pulled off here and here. And so that's how you know that this masonite board went to this visor. And it's really important, as well as the pin. You don't want to get the pins mixed up, because each pin is handed. So this would be the left-handed one, the other one would be the right-handed one, and you don't switch the pins with the masonite, because then it won't fit together right. So what you want to do is, you're going to pull, once you undo this, this is still going to be together. So you're going to pull this out, just wiggle it back and forth, and eventually you'll get it out. Now getting it back in is going to be a bear as well, because what we've got here is, this is a really tight friction fit. But now that I have this out, what I might do is, I might put it back together prior to sewing it, and I haven't decided yet, because I could simply pull this over and then start the sew from here. If you notice, the thread went all the way around. So what they did at the factory was, they flipped this over like this, and then they sewed it all the way around. Now this material here is the same material as you use on your headliner, and you get that in an upholstery shop, an upholstery supply center. So you open this up, and what they did was, they just folded this material over. This is just folded over. It's not held on by anything other than some glue. And so they put a piece of cardboard right in here. And this cardboard gives it a little bit more density. So the headliner material comes with foam on it. And you can actually see the foam right in there peeking out. So you're going to get some headliner material with the foam. We're going to make this out of some construction paper. I picked it up at the dollar store, and I'll show you what that looks like next. So here you have the construction paper, and you can see this is from the dollar store. There's 4 sheets and they're stacked on top of each other. I'm going to use 2 sheets per visor, and then I'm going to fold it over here in the middle. The way I got this pattern was once I cut the thread here, opened this up, took the masonite board out, laid this down like this as a template, and you can see that it's oversized because it goes right out to the edge there. Now, as far as what size to make it, approximate is all you need. It does not have to be super accurate. Your visor might end up being just a little bit too big or a little bit too small. That's fine. That's step 1. So we cut out all 4 pieces at once, and what we're going to do then is we're going to take the headliner material and we're going to put the headliner material on, and we're going to glue it to these cardboard right here. And first thing we're going to do is just going to fold the cardboard over like a dowel, just to give it that little crease there where it goes around like that. And then this is more headliner material, and you can see that it's just sewn together, and they sewed it. But what we're going to do is we're going to put 2 of these on each headliner. And the way you do it is you get some material, headliner material once again, and here we have it. That was pretty fast. And what you do is you just fold the edges over, and then you sew. So you end up with this side-by-side comparison. That's about what it looks like. We're going to fold this in the way they did on both sides. We'll glue it here and here. We're going to glue the fabric to our cardboard. We're going to crease our cardboard, and then once we do that, we're going to put a little bit of glue here, put the masonite board back in, and fold it over. Once it's folded over, we then sew this bead all the way around, stopping here, but you sew it all the way around, even to right here. And I believe they sewed it and they stopped short so that the rod could go through. So again, I haven't decided if I'm going to put the rod in first. I think I am, just because of the difficulty of trying to insert a rod between those clamps once it's already sewed together. So we're going to reinsert that rod, and then we'll go from there. We'll make we'll put this together, and then we'll sew it with the rod in place. And then right here you'll do what's called a lock stitch. So you go forward, backwards, forward, and so you're sewing over your thread, and that locks it in, kind of like tying a knot. And then from there, so we'll do our lock stitch here, and then from there we'll just go all the way around to this side, and you can see Ford did a lock stitch over there as well. And we'll do the same thing. We'll put a lock stitch there, and that should be it. That should be our our visor. And remember, we're going to put these 2 straps on first before we sew this together. That's the plan. All right, so I'm going to show you how to insert this rod. And remember, you don't want to crack your masonite board, and this is riveted with a special kind of flush rivet, so it's going to be kind of hard to duplicate. So you put your rod in here, you want to get it right to the edge of that. Then you're going to put downward pressure with your thumb and upward pressure with this rod, so you're going to be doing this. And then you just want to get that tip into that slot. So get it really close, and then lift and push with your thumb. And now I'm pushing from my right hand into that direction. So we've got it in there. We're just going to keep going with it. And just insert and rotate. Now remember, this is why your visor doesn't just flop down. So you don't want to end up bending this too much. Just get that rod back in there. You can see how I'm working the rod in from this side. And so you want to continually push and turn and get that in there. And you can see how much progress I'm making because the point is now inside of this. And we're just going to keep going with it, pushing and turning. And now we're going to measure, and you can see that we've got a little ways to go. Actually, reading the metal once again, I can see a mark there and a mark there, and my guess is that has to go in this deep, and it straddles either this part or that part, and we'll find out in a second. Still got a ways to go. Okay. We're getting there, but obviously this has got to go in more. So let's keep pushing and turning. And I think that is where the metal is. So imagine, if you will, that this is your headliner. Your visor up at the headliner, screwed in, and when you want to put the visor, you push this down like that. So it goes like this. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put it in here, and once again, it's very important that you have the ability to read your parts so you know how they go back together. So here is the masonite, and if you look right here, you'll see that these cardboard wings flex on the very end of the visor. And that's for a reason. That's because when it goes into the windshield, this can bend a little bit. But what we see is, this has to go in here like that. So that's where the position is. We're gonna, there's that crease right there, the floppy part. So once we make this portion, we're gonna fold it over, glue it all around, glue our two straps, because we're gonna do two of them. And then we're going to fold it over like this, and we're going to sew all along the edge here. Now, Ford chose to put this little edge right here, and that is because this piece goes and gets sandwiched to this, and it allows the thread to completely clamp. So we're going to duplicate that over here wherever we decide to put the second strap. I'll cut a little notch out here, we'll duplicate Ford's efforts, and then we're going to take this over to the sewing machine, starting right here and doing our back stitch, and then going all the way around and stitching over here. So that's our plan. So here we have our visors laid out, and I can show you that I have the rod inserted. Just reading the metal, that's how far it went. And those flat spots help to lock this in so that it's locked in there. When you put it up, it stays up and doesn't come flopping down. So that's what those flat spots in the metal rod are for. And let's see if I can maybe line it up just a little bit better. And this one's actually in just a little bit too far. Here we go. So this flat spot lines up with this bracket, and the long flat spot lines up with this bracket, and then you have another flat spot over here. So one thing I discovered was that when Ford put this together, they sewed first and then they put the metal rod in. So the metal rod is out, they put the masonite right here, folded this over, and then they sewed it. And you can see a puncture mark there, and that's where the rod actually is supposed to come out. And so that allows this material to wrap nicely, and I'll show you, it wraps nicely around like that. We're going to modify that and have it come out the edge here. So we're going to start sewing from here and then go this way. Now this allows clearance so you don't pinch your material. That's the reason why Ford did it. But here's the reality. I'm not Ford, and so when I'm putting these visors together, what I did was I tried to push, I folded the material over the masonite board and then tried to push the rod through here and get it in the clamping system. So I went through that puncture, and I tried to push it through this metal. Now remember, this would be sewed up, so I have no access to the inside, and I can't see how I'm doing here. So you basically have to have a good feel for how you're punching that rod through the hole. So I was trying it to see how feasible it was, and in doing so, the rod, once it was inserted, came out and poked that hole right there. And I don't want to do that to my new headliner. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to actually move this joint here further in to here. And then that way it'll get it away from the bracket. And so it should come in further over here. So it's a little modification to the design. Should work well. And it's not worth trying to put it through a hole and risk puncturing my new sun visor material. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, some of you viewers with sharp eyes may have noticed that I have some markings on the masonite right there. And as I previously stated, Ford cut this notch so that you could put your band strap right in there and still be able to push this together at the edge. So they have this little notch. And the passenger visor had a mirror. We're not going to be able to reinstall the mirror because the mirror was held on with a bezel, and the bezel was pushed through these holes, and then they were melted on this side. At the factory, they melted all of these to hold the bezel in place. I don't have a bezel that has those tabs, and I'm just not going to put the mirror on. So that's what that's all about. And you'll also notice that this has the same notch as this. And that's because Ford uses the same masonite board whether you're on the passenger or you're on the driver's side. The passenger side does not get the strap because the mirror would have been right here where the strap goes. So Ford didn't do that. Now, what they do is they put the strap on the driver's side. And again, we're going to do dual straps. So we're going to put a strap over here as well on both of these. And so we'll see how that goes. Stay tuned. Next up, I'm going to notch this, and I'm going to do it on the bandsaw on both of those, but I'm not going to do it on camera. So here we have our two masonite boards, and they're both notched out. See that? And so we've got driver and passenger, and the way we keep them straight is because these little plastic nubs, obviously, as previously discussed, passenger, and this one is left. And as we all know, in automotive lingo, left-handed is the driver's side. So as I previously stated, the factory used cardboard right in here, and it's a little bit thicker cardboard. I don't have that, so I went to the dollar store. I got some construction paper, and I noticed that one piece of construction paper is a little thin. So what I did was I cut two out. Now, on this construction paper, you'll notice there's a shiny side. On this construction paper, you'll notice there's a shiny side and a dull side. You want to glue the two dull sides together like that. So we're going to glue these together, and we'll trim that out later because obviously it's not symmetric. Maybe what I'll do is, because I think these are all cut out the same, so they should, yeah, so it's not going to line up, but we'll work on that later. First thing we do, we coat both surfaces with some kind of spray adhesive, and for this I'm going to use 3M Super 77. And this stuff gets all over the place, so I'm going to be doing it on cardboard so the overspray doesn't get on my garage floor. If it does, acetone is a real good chemical to remove these kinds of adhesive glues. So, again, I'm probably not going to do that on camera. It's pretty basic. Just going to cover both surfaces and then stick them together after they get tacky. You never put this 3M adhesive or upholstery adhesive together while it's wet. You wait for it to get a little tacky, about 3 to 5 minutes, and then you stick them together. Now, once you've sprayed the adhesive on both surfaces that you're going to mount, what you want to do is you want to make sure they're tacky before you put them together. Two ways to do it. You can actually touch your work, not recommended, or because I sprayed here, you can touch this and you can see when it's tacky. And this is actually very tacky. So we could start to assemble these two and just stick them to each other. So for that, you grab two of whatever you're doing, which in this case is this, and just kind of put them together. Like that. And then you're just going to press it like this. And that's not coming apart. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other set. So you kind of just line up an edge and a couple edges, and once you get a couple edges lined up, should be pretty good to go. And then just press them together. Now in this case, I got a little overzealous here, and there's no way I'm going to be able to pull that apart. It's just not going to happen. But you can see the overlap there. So what I'm going to end up doing is trimming this one down a little bit. Super sticky stuff. It did the job. And now we're just going to let it set for a bit. All right, so now what I have is, I have my cardboard template right there, two of them, and I'm going to kind of put them together a little bit, and then I'm going to trim the edges so that they're pretty much even, because this is going to end up being the template that I'm going to use to cut my headliner material, and that's going to be next. So without further ado, let's just try to see how close we are. And again, you can see that we are close, but not too close. So we're going to trim, and then we're going to make the headliner material for the visor. That sun's a doozy. Okay, so you probably didn't see any of that because you were looking over there. But what I did was I put my two paper templates together along with a visor. Now these visors are exactly the same on both sides, so I am not going to make two patterns. And I'll take my marker, and now we're going to very carefully mark the edge of our visor. Now remember, this is going to be the paper template, and then we're going to cut out the visor material next. So let's see where we are here. And again, we're just kind of getting a rough cut because the material gets folded over this. Now, having said that, you have to understand that we have about 1/4 of an inch extra over here. And when you look at this material here, they folded it over, but they didn't actually quite catch it everywhere. So you can see that the paper didn't get caught over there. It's just material on material. So it's not an exact science. We're just going to trim all the pieces at once on that red line, on the inside of that red line. So here we have both paper cardboard templates, and we have our dowel rod, and you can see how there's an indentation there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this right across here like that, and then we're going to bend it. Also, water can be your friend, and we're going to spray it with a little water and then bend it. Alright, so what I like to do is, before I start bending, I want to make sure that my rod is where I want it to be, and we're just going to mark it so we know, and then we'll make it a little bit moist, and we'll just fold it over. Okay, that should be close enough. So here we go. Got my spray bottle, and we're just going to spray right down the center and kind of get it so it stays. And then we're going to do the same thing because remember, we've got 2 visors we're working on. So once again, we'll spray down the center like that. Then put these together, and let me make sure that you are within the frame of the camera. And we're going to take our stick, our dowel, and just roll this over, trying to get it right on the mark. And we are close, as you can see. Now at this point, what we could do is we could clamp this and allow it to dry. And just curl it over. And I'll get some clamps and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, we've got some spring-loaded clamps. We're going to put that dowel back in there and making sure, so we've got water there. That's kind of moist, and we're just going to clamp this right over the top, should do it. And then again on that side. And what we could do, and you just want to keep forming it, I'm pushing in on the dowel pin, the dowel like that, to give me this rounded crease. And again, we can use water. And the water will help the paper to form and keep that shape. It moistens up the paper, makes it more flexible, and then we're going to set this out in the sun. So, where are we? Just trying to work it around that dowel pin. And I believe that's a 3/8 inch dowel. It says so right there, as a matter of fact. All right, let's go set this in the sun, let it dry. So here's what we've got now. Here is our dowel rod and our clamps. So let's take the clamps off, shall we?